Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anthony Manuel. I am the head of marketing here at nofilter.net. I love this platform. I think it's amazing. And before I got into the marketing game, the digital marketing game, I was really obsessed with training, athletic training specifically. And I trained some athletes, I trained some bodybuilders. I was a personal trainer for about 10 years before I got into digital marketing. And, I still follow training and training modalities and athletic training very closely. Sport medicine is something that's still very close to my heart. And what I'm really excited about is we're introducing the GLS performance team to the No Filter team of hosts here. These guys are some of the greatest innovators in athletic training in my mind. They're changing not only the way that athletes train, the way that athletes feel like great in their bodies, stay injury proof throughout their whole seasons, but they're also changing the way that we study athletic performance and sport science in general. I don't want to talk too much, but I'd like to introduce you guys to Gary Scheffler and Ricky Stanzi, the two founders of the GLS performance team, powered by Goata. And guys, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your method is, what Goata is, and what makes it different from other basically training methodologies that are out right now?
Cool. Why don't you give them an overview of Goata, and then I'll tell them how we got to this point.
Yeah, so Goata stands for the greatest of all time actions. And these are actions that were first observed, or should I say rediscovered, from a man named Jose Bosch. We call him Coach Gilly around here. And what he essentially did was took the iPad to the TV, took the iPad to the YouTube database, and started to look at the most durable humans on the planet, starting with the indigenous cultures like the Hadza, the Karubo, the Yanomamis, and then looking at the crawling baby, the developmental phase of the toddler, and then taking a peek at these super freak athletes that can play a decade plus and stay relatively injury resistant, and then kind of wrapping it all up with the track and field world championships and looking at the 70 plus age groupers that are able to perform without physiotape. So what Gilly noticed was that through the lifespan, not only looking at those closest to the source like the indigenous and the crawling baby, but looking at those who perform at a high level regardless of age group, that there's a common pattern here, a pattern of security, right? A pattern that is anti-fragile. And what he also noticed was sort of the opposite, which is what we call WOTA, the worst of all time actions. And this is a pattern that is associated with those that are fragile. They are susceptible to the injury. And what showed him that was really taking a deep dive into the ACL non-contact shred, the Achilles non-contact shred, and then seeing where those patterns show up in our regular everyday life, and then where they really show up is in the training. So now through the slow motion video, Gilly was able to really look and see the global laws of nature as they pertain to forward locomotion, which is what we are designed to do. Eyes in the front, rear wheel drive propulsion system, glutes drive the body forward. So now we are looking at movement in a whole different way, because we've all grown up, and you just kind of mentioned it, or we've all been indoctrinated into this lifting. And lifting is WOTA because it's moving the energy in reverse. Goata is moving the energy forward through space. So there is a dominant pattern that we have to adhere to. There are global laws that we have to adhere to for forward movement, and there's no way to get around taking that forward step. It's what we're built to do. And when we do too much lifting, too much WOTA, we will change that GOTA behavior to WOTA, and we will start to move towards a fragile body, a more susceptible body to injury. But now with the assessment protocols and the training protocols that Gary's put in place, we're starting to take these WOTAs and move them back to their innate OS, back to the GOTA framework. And that's led us to where we are now.
Yeah. He brought the system to me, and basically it was kind of in pieces, and I didn't really understand the transfer of energy. I understood strength development, speed development, isolating muscles and things like that. So, I looked at it, and I've been knowing Gilly for years, and Gilly came in, I gave him a little closet space in the gym, and I'm like, go ahead, man. I got a couple of guys that first kid I sent to him, safety at Nickel State. And I'm like, man, he's too heavy on his feet. You know what I'm saying? And at the time, I didn't know why. But now I know because all he did was heels down training, right? He became great in the weight room. He went up there. He was the best. He broke all the records for safeties or something at Nickel State. So I sent him back here to Gilly. He was coming off a little labrum issue in the hip, and he comes in and Gilly fixes him. I don't know what he did with him. I don't know, how he did it or whatever. I couldn't understand it. So sends him back out to me. I send him back in 2 weeks later. Gilly's like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. He's got a little labrum thing again. He's back running with his feet. Well, we was in there deadlifting, Olympic lifting, linear speed training, and doing all of this kind of crap. And I was like, send him back in there. Gilly fixed him again. He goes up to school. He goes back into the weight room, and he ends up tearing the muscle off the bone or so he had a real bad nasty injury up there, ended up needing hip surgery, and it was a mess. So that was the first case, and Gilly started kind of putting a little pressure on me, you know what I'm saying? He's like, Gary, listen, it's what you're doing, it's not. And then I send somebody else in and kind of some of the same stuff. And so finally it comes down to Jamal Chase. Jamal was with me since the 8th grade. Jamal, he does an eval on Jamal, his little system that he had, and tells me that Jamal is a high risk of injury. And I'm like, that's Jamal Chase, dude. You tripping. You don't know what you're talking about. And sure enough, he comes down with a ball his senior year in the back of the end zone, and he has a little patella issue or something like that. And, I didn't understand inside ankle bone low or inside ankle bone high behavior at the time. So I kind of, but when that happened to Jamal, I was like, I had to take a step back and look in the mirror and say, what am I doing? And if somebody's giving me information that obviously sees something that I don't. And I mean, everybody knows who Jamal Chase is now. He's the hottest rookie in the NFL. And it's like, I didn't want to be the one that didn't let him have that opportunity.
Right.
I wasn't helping Jamal Chase by the way that I was training him. I was actually taking years off of his career is what I was doing. So when I figured that out, and I got a deep connection with my athletes and stuff like that. So, my heart went out to him when he got hurt. And then it's like somebody, I don't want to be the one responsible for that. So I changed the gym. Scrapped everything we had reverse hypers and, probably 10,000 pounds in weight and stuff like that. And we kept what we needed. You know what I'm saying? We kept what we needed. We stopped fooling with the flat bars on the backs and stuff like that. And we it was a slow drip. Like the change came, it wasn't an overnight thing, but, the more that we got into it, and it was like, Gilly, check this out. Now Gilly's my mentor now. Like, you know what I'm saying? At that point, he was no longer just some guy in the front in the closet space. He started, Gilly's concept is when a student's ready, the teacher will appear. And it's like, he's like, I was here the whole time. And he's like, you just wasn't ready for it. I had to let you become ready. And that incident, and then I had some kids, my 2019 class and my 2018 class, which Jamal was in, was very dear to me. I was real close. We was traveling the country with those kids, going to camps and stuff like that. So I couldn't sleep if I would have been the one that would have put them in a bad situation. So got rid of, a couple of coaches left, picked up the iPad myself. I started studying the injury, looking for, I kind of was able to, at the time, identify what the mechanism of injury was. And it was caused by inside ankle bone low. And which, medial malleolus low, whatever you want to call it, knee goes into valgus. But once I was able to see that, then I started building my strength programs, my speed programs around the security that we identified, which was the bow at the time, right? Inside ankle bone high, straight feet. We started changing things. We started creating the wedges and to neurologically feel the difference, to wake their kinesthetic awareness up and show them or get them to feel. It was see, feel, right? Show them what we're looking for, make them feel it, and it just started to change.
So,
Insert Joe Este, which is Goata Joe, and then we do his combine training, and he went nuts. So that was, it kind of expedited at that point.
So to simplify it, and for the people who just got on, Goata is like the whole Goata movement system. You guys sort of looked at a lot of slow motion video of the best movers in the world and then the worst movers in the world. And the best movers in the world tended to stay injury proof, and they exhibited certain behavior patterns. And then the worst movement, like the guys that were getting injured, they showed the same sort of structures in their feet, the structures in their knees, the same patterns. And you kind of realize that a lot of the strength and conditioning that is popular in athletic training, like the Olympic lifting, lifting weights off the ground, heavy barbell back squats. Again, I did all that stuff too, right? It's popular. It's almost like dogmatic in the mind of strength trainers. What you noticed was the patterns that even if people are getting, more neurologically strong, or they're having, more power and strength, the downside is that they're programming in these behaviors that is consistent with all these other athletes that are always getting injured. So what you did is you took a step away from that, and you decided, okay, well, forward locomotion, like the ability to move and drive forward, seems to be the most important biomechanical function of the human body. Can we bias training to optimize that, specifically honoring these particular principles of human movement? Is that a good summary, would you say?
That
was excellent.
Pretty good.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah. We walked away from it. Yeah. I changed everything. I lost the money, and people that didn't understand what we was trying to do walked away. And the people that understood still today, people that's never seen it's like, that don't work. You know what I'm saying? They don't understand. So, but yeah, that was a real good explanation.
And I think, because I've been studying Goata and your principles, and I've been following you guys for a long time. It's the reason I reached out to you, is I'm a big fan of your work. The thing is too, you're looking at film to kind of determine what these biomechanical patterns are versus, a lot of maybe academic literature would look at structure and then try to reverse engineer how that structure is supposed to move without actually looking at the film. So you have sort of, the mainstream academics who are looking at the structure and trying to deduce how you're supposed to move based on, you call it cadaver science, right? They're looking at the actual, just like the tissues and the bones and the actual structure, and guessing how you're supposed to move instead of looking at actual movement. And so there's this almost disconnect between people who are saying, well, where's your study? But you are studying just in a different way. You're looking at the actual movement and the actual structural patterns in motion, as opposed to just looking at these structures, in isolation and trying to figure out how people would move based on that.
We did the ultimate study. At the end of the day, we stepped back and we stepped away from everything that was going on, and we didn't look at data analytics, and we didn't look at the numbers and how much somebody could lift. And you got 150, it's being said right now in the gym. They got dudes 250 pounds shredded that can't hit the ball as far as a guy that's 200 pounds and just looks like he just got off the couch. You know what I'm saying? It's all about a transfer of energy. And that's what you got to understand is the difference is we're not talking muscle no more. We're talking about energy transferring through the body. How can Jenny Finch throw a pitch underhand as hard as most baseball players at the highest level? She could throw harder than most of them in comparison. You know what I'm saying? She's not no big old jacked up person, but she mastered that technique, right? She understands how to make that body work and move through space that's optimal to get that ball to go. She ain't muscling it there. Trust me.
So would you say the difference is between it's the difference between pure strength and efficiency of movement?
Yeah, you could say when you look at the way that things kind of started in sort of, I guess, people reverse engineering movement, was it started off on the wrong foot when you start with a cadaver science template, right? So what Gary's saying is we have an energy science template over here, but all the other maps that were put forth are cadaver science maps. So now you take sagittal, frontal, transverse. You break it up and you make up these made up ranges: supination, pronation, flexion, extension, rotation, all these words that they only pertain to a dead body on the table because somebody cut it with a scalpel and said, this is supination, this is pronation. When you turn on the tape, those one plane, one range words, they die. Because in nature, nothing in the organic world can move one plane, one range. Everything's a pivot point energy system. So the energy has to spiral around a corner. So now what is needed is a new map, a new language. We need a verb. We need to describe behavior, describe movement as it pertains to a human body. Like Gary says, moving energy from one column, one side of the body to the other. The cadaver map will never, ever do it justice. And that's why, like you said, if the underpinning is a cadaver science map, and then you go watch a tornado move through space, you're essentially trying to take the tornado that is one big entity moving in a pivot point energy system fashion around a corner, and you're trying to measure just isolated wisps of wind to understand the tornado. You're not standing back from a macro viewpoint and seeing it in all of its glory. So people weren't taking a step back to see the human body in all of its glory and how it moves energy. When it moves energy, those words die. Supination's fake, pronation's fake, nothing moves one plane, one range. So if your study is looking for supination and pronation, you're literally blind looking at movement. And then the other piece is, who are you studying?
Yeah.
If you're studying us in a Western society that have had decades of poor footwear, decades of poor resting options, decades of bad training, well, then you're just going to see a bunch of front chain dominant inside ankle bone low WOTAs, and you're going to assume that is the norm. Now, when you turn on the tape and you watch the Karubos or the Yanomamis or the Hadzas, they're not moving like we move. They're not standing like we stand. They're not resting like we rest. So by looking back at, and this is really what science is, it's the observation of nature. So unless someone's doing a movement study where they first look at the body in nature, then everything they do after that is void. And so people will bring studies up, and I said, did you look at the Hadza? Did you look at who'd you look at? Oh, we looked at Karen and Kim. Well, they're fucking WOTAs. They're not the people we got to look at. We got to start with the durable and then reverse engineer from there. Nature is the teacher, observe, and then train accordingly. And that's what we do here.
Right. And that's why it's the greatest of all time actions. You're looking specifically for those untouched sources, like you said. If you're Goata, like you said, you almost require a new map and a new language to use it. Some of the maybe sterile academic terms like pronation and supination don't make sense. In my mind, it was like, okay, so supination would be inside ankle bone high, and then pronation would be inside ankle bone low. But the more I thought about it, it was like, well, no, it's a little more nuanced than that, right? Because it's talking more, just talking less about the movement within the foot and more talking about the structure and the pattern. So let's go even more fundamental for the people who are listening and don't really know the language yet. And what are the greatest of all time actions? If you observe this sort of North Star for what the proper behavior patterns of human beings should be, you use terms like back chain dominant, you use terms like bow and corner, and a lot of people might not know what those terms mean right off the get-go. So what are the greatest of all time actions, and how can we look for them in ourselves?
So the global laws of Goata, kind of run down a few of them and start to paint a picture in people's minds, is first look at each side of the body as a column. Okay, let's just, for our mind's eye view, let's just start with the right side of the body so we can shut down one column and just see a side. So you've got the shoulder, you've got the forearm, you've got a half of the spine, you've got the thigh, you've got the shin. Those are going to play like a gyroscope. You got ball and socket really from shoulder, forearm, thigh, and ankle, and then you got a coupled motion at the spine. But everything's built to spiral around the outside corner of the foot. So you need foot control at the base of that column. So that's A, number one. If my foot does not have control inside ankle bone high, everything upstream in that column is going to suffer. So first and foremost, the columns have to be built with straight feet. Then I need to have foot control, meaning I need to be inside ankle bone high. And like you said, inside ankle bone high is extremely nuanced, right? Supination and pronation will never explain this concept because, once again, the action of inside ankle bone high is going to be a spiral action in and of itself to really treat the foot like a half dome that doesn't allow pressure to drop down and in. So it's a half dome arch. Arches aren't meant to collapse. The pressure then can funnel to the outside, backside of the body. So now to get that pressure to funnel to the outside, backside, we need to be back chain dominant. So what back chain dominant means is that my hip is going to sit right on top of my ankle as I'm waiting to move forward. And then as I go to propel myself forward, my hip needs to actually move further back. So hips behind ribs, back chain dominance, because from back there, now I've lengthened the system. You could almost say back chain dominance is really compression control, to keep it simple, right? I have these gyroscopes on each side of the body. They have a certain length that they're going to be optimal at. So if I compress the system by pushing the hip forward, the gyroscopes suffocate. They don't have the space to create the energy wave and release the energy wave. Now, when I move the hip back, and just people staying at home can do this, move your hip back, you'll notice a length start to play out in the system. Now you have space to create the energy wave and to release the energy wave. And that's where it kind of brings us back to these gyroscopes. So now your shin plays like a ball and socket. Your thigh plays like a ball and socket. Your spine plays like one big ball and socket using couple motion technology. And then your forearm can play like a ball and socket. Same with your biceps. So now I'm in the back chain. I've got a straight foot. I'm inside ankle bone high. I don't know if y'all can see me. And now I can create this energy wave. So creating the energy wave is an opening of the column, right? Picture this like a spiral staircase, right? Like a spiral door hinge, if you will. And the outside, top outside corner of the foot, that from your second metatarsal all the way around the corner to this bone called the cuboid, that's what I like to call the T-bone steak. That's the ball of the foot that I want to put the pressure on. Your big toe and your heel are like eggshells. You don't want to crush the eggshells. The big toe is just going to be there for balance, and the heel is really a kickstand for rest, having nothing to do with forward movement. So now I've got a good base at the column. I'm back chain dominant, so my hip's behind my rib. Now that shin can spiral open. And if I understand that the shin's a ball and socket, and here's my ball and socket facing forward, this shin spirals open, the hip spirals open, the spine spirals open, the biceps spirals open, and now I'm in this space back here. I'm sort of in that hurricane. The eye of the hurricane is that top outside corner of my foot. And I complete this beautiful building of energy by making sure I have head control, meaning that the visual tracking system is sitting right on top of that column underneath the foot. And now I'm in this energy wave. So I've created what we call a bow. And if you can just look at this shape in the leg, when I open it up, it sort of opens like a bow. And then I need to go ahead and corner the energy. I need to release that energy. And cornering action is just spiraling the energy around the top outside corner of the foot, not sacrificing any of the things I started with, not sacrificing foot control, not sacrificing back chain dominance, and letting those gyroscopes really open and close in the back chain. That's how we are supposed to move forward through space. Now, the Goata action is just literal opposite of that. You go inside ankle bone low, you go to the inside and you wash pressure outwards. You go to the inside and you wash pressure outwards. So you use the inside corner of the foot as your pivot point to dig into the ground and go in reverse. Think of the reverse in your car, right? You have the ability to drive backwards. You have the ability to back up, but the dominant means of moving the car is in forward, in drive gear. So our bodies are very similar. Yes, you can lift. Yes, you can pick something up, but the dominant way that you are built is back chain dominant. It's not 50-50. It's not even locomotion lift. It's 90-10, maybe 99-1, because the hunter-gatherers are in a basically a lift and haul society. They're going to do one lifting rep, transfer it to a locomotive sort of setup, and then they're going to walk forward through space to get back to camp. We're now in a lift and drop society. So now you take the Goata framework and you go in reverse. You go in reverse. You go in reverse. And now you start to walk in reverse. You walk in reverse. And this is the inside ankle bone low front chain dominance movement epidemic that we are trying to pull people out of. Does that help?
Right. I was able to follow all of that personally. And guys, this is No Filter Network, which is a live interactive platform. We have the live chat. So if you're losing any of this, go into the chat. I was kind of taking notes in the chat, kind of summarize some of the points that Ricky was making there in terms of some of the Goata fundamentals. If you have any questions about this, shoot them in the chat. We also have the knock function, which allows you to join the stream directly. You can actually join on video and ask questions that are a little more specific or nuanced to either your background. And that's the glory of No Filters, that you can actually ask in real time if you're not following along, right? So for me, that made a ton of sense. And again, like, one of the reasons that you guys are saying, like, don't focus on lifting as much is because it's patterning in the wrong behaviors, right? If you're repeating,
anything you do driving your heel into the ground, where it's like load the heel, load the heel, load the heel, you neurologically changing, you at max neural drive, right? You're going to put that heel in the ground and this ankle's going to collapse. That's going to stress. That's all your Achilles tears, is the body's going this way, but you using reverse to get there. So the Achilles tendon, it's wrapping the wrong way. It's doing the wrong thing. It goes inside low. Then the heel hits the ground and it shreds. Now, how many of those reps can you get away with before that thing pops, right? How many times can we stress it out in the weight room? Because all you're doing is prepping the injury. You're not prepping the sport no more, right? So if you thrust in the hips forward, go to a deadlift position, heels down. If he's constantly pulling weight from the ground, thrusting his hips, he's locking his up. He can no longer, when he goes to go forward, he's not going to want to keep it back because he's been pulling the hips forward at max neural drive, right? So you change the behavior in the hip. Not one time did you see his hip come forward in relationship to his chest. If his hip goes forward, it's driving the chest. It's not thrusting and going backwards. So a kettlebell swing, a deadlift, anything like that, where you're driving pressure into the heel and thrusting the hips forward, is trash for forward locomotives.
It's funny too, because what you just said about like the max neural drive thing, people don't realize how neurologically demanding heavy weightlifting can be and how much it codes your nervous system to be efficient in that pattern. Like, just the other day I was in the gym and I've been doing recode work with Goata and trying to train these behavior patterns for months now. And I've finally gotten the heels away when I step, and I have all that. And just as an experiment, I did like a heavy 5-rep deadlift, just one set of 5 reps, and immediately went on the sled and just walked forward to see what my natural pattern would be. And even though I'd been walking for months, heels away, like with one set of deadlifts, I went heels out to in. It was literally like my pattern just reversed itself.
Yeah, what was a bite, dude? What is a bite? You get back on that bitch and ride again if you want.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
Here's how we say it. The nervous system, Anthony, it's a servant to the environment, right? So it's kind of dumb. It just does what it's told, right? And so it's being told in a weight room: inside ankle bone low, inside corner of the foot is your new pivot point. Heels down is how you create drive. I want that shin in. I want that shin out. I want that shin in. I want that shin out. Push your hip forward. This is what your brain's hearing. It's hearing this over and over and over again. You put your foot in the ground, guess what? You get what you worked for. It works. WOTA works. We see it all the time. Now we've changed that, and now we're in the gym, and now we're saying, get your inside ankle bone high. Get on the top outside corner of your foot. Open the shin. Open the thigh. Move the hip back. Drive the chest forward. Keep the head in the column. So now we change behavior. The same way you take your dog to an obedience class and they pound that good behavior. We pound good movement behavior into the nervous system. We tip the scale with the inputs. And now, because movement is going to go back to the subconscious, once you code and you go from this WOTA end, you get to the middle where you're about BOTA, you're blended, then you keep moving towards GOTA. At some point, it's going to become subconscious. And that is the battle, is repping it out, getting your recode to recode your nervous system so that you change the subconscious. Now, your brain does not want to go inside ankle bone low. Why? You told it to. We all know that routines work. We all know that habits work. And it's no different for your musculoskeletal system. It's no different for these gyroscopes and the pivot points.
So we got some cool audience questions here right now. Dominic Phillips is bringing up a cool question. I know one of the things you said, you almost use your spine as a gyroscope, and spinal mobility is very, very important in my mind for forward locomotion. A lot of the stuff that I see with Goata is very in alignment with spinal engine theory of forward locomotion, that free movement of the spine. And in my mind, too much core tension too. I was also thinking, it's like, man, when I was deadlifting and squatting a lot, I didn't have a lot of spinal mobility because I was always bracing my core super intensely, right? Yeah. And so Dominic Phillips' question, I've seen not to brace the core when doing Goata. So what part does the core play a role in Goata training? If at all.
The core's lanyard. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, that's a muscle thought. Like, once again, it gets
again, you isolating. You know what I'm saying? Leave that alone. You're gonna get six pack. See, it's an aesthetic thing, right? It's something that we've been led to believe is the reason why we go into valgus, because we may have weak adductors, a weak core, we got a weak glute. It's always something that's weak, because on that table, you look at something and you say, well, this one's bigger than this one. Well, then we need to strengthen that one. But if you don't change the behavior for the transfer of energy, then you're not going to have development in the muscle that they think is weak. It's not a isolate the muscle and build it back up thing. It's a get them to move right, and it's going to all be lanyard. The body's going to develop how it's supposed to for forward locomotives. Or you're going to go and isolate it, and you're going to keep training it to go backwards, and then you're trying to go forwards, and that's when length comes into play. That's whenever your gyroscopes aren't moving like they're supposed to, and then you start to get the little inflammation here and there. You get the itises in the knee. You get all of that stuff. People that come in here we've had people with no meniscus in their knee, and get them back running again when we start moving them right. See, it's about inputs too. Pain is a signal from the central nervous system saying that something's not right. Right? You go and you run, and something's not right. Then what do they tell you? Hey, man, listen, take these anti-inflammatories, stay off of it for 3 days. Well, fuck, you stop doing anything, and you're going to feel better. You just lay up on the sofa, your knee's going to feel better. But then you go back out there and run, and you got the pain again. Then it's like, well, you got to have a weak glute. So they start doing hip thrusting and glute bridges and all of this stuff to build all of the glutes up. And then it's still what? Hip thrust, hip thrust, hip thrust. You go back out there, you walk wrong, you go inside ankle bone low, and you get the itis again. We come in here, we get the heels up inside ankle bone high, put your ass back, and get you moving forward like you're supposed to, and the pain goes away mysteriously.
And if you also look at, to go deeper dive for you, Dominic, on the spinal engine, right? Remember this, what we talked about with the global laws, okay? So I've got back chain, and this word's important, dominance, right? I want to dominate with the backside. So it's not this 50-50 that sometimes we get led on to believe, like I want perfect symmetry and from the front and the back and the sides. It's really not that way. It's a rear wheel drive propulsion system. So the glute is the bigger muscle. It gets very thick. Let's just say it gets thick on the backside for a reason, because that's what's there to drive me forward through space. So when we take a mindset of, I'm going to train an isolated muscle, I'll get into a situation where if I start to train the abs, what happens is now the front side inside dominates. And so now get back to movement behavior. If my front side inside dominates, now I start to become front chain dominant. And so now I'm dominating with the front side of my body as opposed to dominating with the back side of my body. So you almost feel like the front side is lengthening, and the backside is kind of getting this nice form closure, and it's getting stronger. And now, in regards to the spinal engine theory, there's some good stuff there, but the missing piece is really foot control and understanding that this gyro is just a gyro inside of many other gyros. That is just one big gyro, that's the body. So what happens is people get, and I was the same way, you get stuck on the spinal engine, you do so much with the spine that you end up actually pushing the hip into the front chain, and you suffocate the thigh gyro and the shin gyro. So what you want is really a harmonious opening with the whole column. And there's a little bit of bend there. And yes, coupled motion does cite that if I bend the rod once, twice, I get this rotary behavior. But if I look at it in that isolated framework, it stops me from seeing the spine do this, seeing the spine wave through space. So if I'm constantly clenching the core, pulling things into the front chain and doing too much with the abs, I'll suffocate the hip and I'll actually end up suffocating the spine, and I won't let that beautiful couple motion gyroscope spin through space. So what we often tell people is, yes, you may have a muscle imbalance, but the way that the nervous system is working is that it's like a Russian doll effect. We're going to change the pattern, change the force transmissions at the capsule level. Then that tells the brain to loosen up muscle spindles and build power in the right spot. So you want to dominate with the backside outside, not the front side inside, right? The front side inside is more protection, reproduction. When you are getting to a fetal position, what do? You protect the front side inside, because the backside outside is the strong side. Think of a karate chop. You're going to lead with the strong side of the hand. You got to lead with the strong side of the foot. So we don't want to get into a world where we focus too much on this gyro and lose the other gyros. And if you keep that hip behind the rib, you should feel like everything can spin in harmony. And as simple as we teach it to our athletes, to give you an idea and a glimpse, we would say, get your hip behind the rib, point your chest out with the kneecap. That's it. Because we just want to get them into behavior that when my foot hits the ground, my hip goes behind my rib, my inside ankle bone climbs high, the kneecap and the chest point out. Now I'm in the energy wave. Remember, go back to energy science, not cadaver science. I find that swell. I find that tornado. I find that hurricane wall, and now I can wash it around the corner. And that's the real power. The power is not from here. The power is everywhere, and it's just moving it fluidly through space. But if I collapse the pivot point or if I move to the front chain, I will suffocate the gyro and it won't move in harmony.
Show them a crunch.
Right. You crunch something.
Where that fits in.
Right. Hip goes under rib.
Hip
so
forward.
now
Yeah,
if
there
I'm
you go.
crunching and I'm crunching and I'm crunching and I'm overdoing it, I will change behavior. I will dominate with the front side. Whereas if the hip's behind the rib, the hip's behind the rib, the hip's behind the rib, now I'm lengthened out. Now everything has its appropriate space. It can whip, it can flip, it can turn, it can spin, it can cycle in harmony, and everything stays safe because I never collapse. Get back to the feet. Keep your eyes on the feet. Start with the feet. When that half dome collapses, bad shit happens. So focus on foot control first and foremost, because if you lock up that ankle, nothing else matters, because you're going to lock up the hip, you're going to lock up the spine, and you're not going to be able to transfer energy efficiently.
Right. So
Ricky,
it sounds
Ricky will deep dive the foot and ankle complex, and we're gonna have some of that once we start putting all our content up on No Filter and all. But going back to your Super Nation and Pro Nation, that's just looking at something on a table and just moving it like this. When the ankle, and he'll talk to you more about that, is really, if you treat it like a ball and socket, it's got a movement that you can't describe with those two words because of the way that it moves. It's climbing.
There's no word for this.
Yeah,
there's no word in a textbook for this. This is why inside ankle bone high had to be created. And then people will mislabel it saying it's supination. And then some people that are, they want to know, they want to fix themselves, they will think in terms of supination. Then they'll come in and be like, dude, my feet were hurting. I'm like, well, yeah, you're walking around in some fake cadaver term. You're not really honoring the foot as it was designed. So there is much nuance to the foot, absolutely. And once again, feel, we can't trust our feels, guys. Like, we honestly can't, because we're all WODAs. Yeah. So if we listen to what our body's comfortable with, it's comfortable with WODA. So we'll often hear coaches come in and they're like, I don't understand how you could be inside ankle bone high and make that cut. I go, I know you don't understand. You inside ankle bone low in your assessment. Your nervous system has no fucking clue how to do it. Yeah. But I'm going to get you there, right? I'm going to get you there by showing you Randy Moss, Ed Reed, Simone Biles, Michael, AI, because they could do it. So there is a plan there. They got feet just like you. They got ankles just like you. It's the same technology. The universe fractals this out. There's spines, land, air, and sea. There's ankles, land, air, and sea. There's hips, land, air, and sea. The universe must have decided this shit works. Let's keep bringing this thing out. Let's keep bringing this thing out. A hip's a hip, an ankle's an ankle, a foot's a foot. They have a design. They have a technology. Nature's the objective reality. We got to pay homage. If we don't pay homage to that, we're fucked, because we have the wrong map. We don't know shit. We're just a reflection. So now we flip the mirror, we look back at nature, and we can learn.
So the reason you wouldn't say, focus on the core is because you're not looking at it as individual body parts. In fact, you're not looking at it in the lens of any sacred cow of any strength training. The brace the core model is relevant for lifting, because if you're trying to, you're putting axial loading on your spine, you would want to brace your core to sort of protect it. But now you're saying it's like, okay, but that is in and of itself patterning in the wrong behaviors for what we are supposed to do. So you basically have to throw out everything that you would ever kind of like take if like, for me, I have a 10-year strength and conditioning background. I'm going to let all of that go and start using it.
It's gone.
Like it's gone. It's gone. It's like you said, you got rid of all your equipment, right? So my question is too, because maybe this is still just a little bit of my strength and conditioning background, conditioning my thought process. But if these energy waves are made in this pattern, and they're parts of a chain, right? You have your ankle, your knee, your hip. There's still joints and there's still parts of your chain. And when you're assessing these movements and the ability to create energy waves, if people are patterning these WOTA, these really bad behaviors, could they develop deficiencies in certain parts of their body? And would isolation play a part in maybe restoring some function within the context, or are you just practicing the patterns? You never isolate anything, even to restore. It's always just the patterns.
So think about what you're saying. Where does the isolation fit in? Like where does if I got a quad deficiency, where does this fit into the movement pattern? You know what I'm saying? So if we identify something in the assessment, we're not looking for a weakness in the muscle. We're looking for a deficiency in the chain from a movement or energy transfer perspective. If I see inside ankle bone low, it's a behavior. Ground contact.
So that's kind of what I'm saying. If you see just like everything else seems to be good, they're doing like a lot of the pattern, but their inside ankle bone is low. Would you spend more time working on the foot and ankle complex in isolation? Or would you start just practicing the full energy wave and just with that in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we want to start you macro, okay? But that doesn't mean that we can't dive inside of that macro shape and think micro, or should I say focus on the micro, right? Like, let's say we're doing a Bolt calf raise, right? So a Bolt calf raise is more geared towards an inside ankle bone high behavior. So somebody that's really inside ankle bone low, I'm going to bring them into this inside ankle bone high shape because it's easier to control in this position. But if you look around at the other parts, I'm still paying homage to the full macro picture of a global law. So I'm still in a bow. I'm still back chain dominant, right? I still have the feet in a narrow base so that I'm underneath my columns. But for this particular exercise, we maybe have taken and dove into the micro of the global laws and said, let's really dial in the foot control here. Let's make sure that we give this person a little extra stimulus at that foot level, because the assessment showed us that of all the global laws, this one was suffering. So now it's more macro, micro, but we will never abandon the macro to just train the micro. It's always got to be macro first, dive in, but come right back to the macro.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of that was so what I'm hearing is you wouldn't isolate body parts or joint complexes specifically. You would isolate aspects of the total behavior. So it's like if you're looking at the
fractal of the movement. Yeah. Like if somebody's got a bad landing, Anthony, right? Somebody can't land. Well, we're going to spend more time getting them to create the energy wave, right? We're going to get them into the space where they're going to be spending more time learning how to land, banging those reps into the nervous system. Conversely, if somebody can't leave, they're stuck, we might spend more time bringing the energy around the corner, So inside of that wave or that cycle that is a pack, corner, release, reset cycle, we could kind of slow things down. And the reality is you do have to slow things down, right? Yeah. The nervous system needs to be spoon-fed early on, not waterboarded. So what we do is we've kind of been able to create exercises, I don't even like that word, more behaviors, drills, to bring out those sort of behaviors in a easier digestible way for the nervous system, so that we don't make it panic and shut her up again because it's trying to protect itself. So we got to slowly let it decompress first, and we have a process that we go through to make sure that everybody's in a good spot before we start adding too much volume.
That's super cool. We got another audience question, but he actually knocked and wants to join as well. So rather than reading his question, I'm going to add him into the chat
show him
here.
how it works.
And I think Will, if you want to knock again, if that didn't work, I think I might have hit the wrong button. So Will, if you hit the knock button again, you can join on there. Dominique is saying because certain joints are free. Because certain joints are free, the ankle, and some are fixed knee, is it bad to wear knee pads or braces on fixed joints? Fixed joints.
How's it going, guys?
How
you
doing,
man? What's up?
Good. Yeah, so I've been checking your workout for a couple of years now. Love it. It's changed the way I move. I'm a chiropractor, put it into my practice. It's gotten me great results so far. I come from the academic world, so there's a few things, with the language that we use with the ankle and the foot that may not jive, and you've probably seen that on Instagram. I've seen a few threads where you guys are, kind of your ideas are being strawmanned. Okay, so to clear things up, I wanted to ask a question specifically with the ankle. Okay, so when you take a step, the ankle bone stays high, and that's the talus, right? The talus is pushing up on the middle, the medial malleolus. Okay, so they're both climbing at the same time, and that's pushing the lateral malleolus out, the outside ankle bone. This is all true so far?
I would say that the foot, that piece right there, that is going to pop up into a half dome arch, right? The cuboid's moving down, the first cuneiform is moving up, and there's a slight turn in that's going to create that half dome spiral, almost like if you see it like this with the hands, and the inside ankle bone pops high. Now that talus is in a position where it can open and close. So it can spiral open, and then the foot can stay in that same position, inside ankle bone high, as I spiral my shin inwards. So the old way was they thought you had to pronate to get the shin to turn in. But you can turn the shin in, keeping the inside ankle bone high. You can turn the shin out, you can turn the shin in without leaving the outer portion of the foot.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And the term pronation, I can see how usually you do see pronation on a slow motion video. The best marathoners will show it, Bolt will show it. Most people show pronation in the way it's defined by academics. And you rarely see the actual outside edge being the only thing turning, right? So how much give is there? You know what I mean? Like, is it that you put most of the weight on the outside edge, you pivot, and a little bit of it comes to the inside towards the big toe? Or is it a pivot system where most of your energy is already sent by the time you pivot out?
At its best, from a Goata 10 perspective, if you're watching an Ed Reed run out the tunnel, there's no drop whatsoever. Now, if the drop starts to bleed into the behavior, like a Usain Bolt, if you look at Bolt's right foot, his right foot is much straighter than his left, and his left foot was the
They freeze a little bit. Is that just me?
Yeah, that's frozen.
left foot kind of crank out a little bit more, but the right foot stays straight. At its best performance, that foot can be straight, inside ankle bone high, and it doesn't have to budge inside ankle bone low. Now, in an assessment process based off of where somebody may be in their life or what they've got from an input standpoint, you'll see people that are starting to lose it. So you're kind of seeing a behavior in process of changing, much like when we start to move people the other way, we see the inside ankle bone climbing higher a little bit. So they're really either losing foot control or they're gaining foot control. But at its best, we should be able to keep the foot straight and not let anything sacrifice. If somebody has a sacrifice at the foot level, what it often looks like, Will, is you'll see the foot turn out with the shin, or you'll see the inside ankle bone collapse low with the shin. To put it simply, really the foot and the ankle are just a little sticky. So now to get the shin to open, I've got to turn the foot out. To get the shin to turn in, I got to collapse the foot down. Whereas if I can, for lack of a better word, since you're in the industry, disassociate, let that glide and slide happen between the talus and the navicular. If I get that restored in the person's ankle, they should be able to hold their inside ankle bone high just fine. But if I don't address the straight foot and I don't let them get these reps, I don't let them wind up and open up the ankle like that, then yes, they will do things that look funny, like get a crooked foot or lose some inside ankle bone low, because they're trying to get that spin and they're in a compensatory pattern based off of some missing foot control.
Okay. It's the further the drop, you start to lose efficiency in the beginning, and then the further that it goes, it starts to get into unsafe territory. So when we want to raise athleticism, or we want to raise performance, the higher that we get the inside ankle bone high to behave through the process with no pronation, for lack of better words, then the better the athlete gets, the better that they feel, and the more performance. So when we see somebody in the eval that drops a certain amount, we go after that, and then we can increase performance too.
So how much weight are you pushing off 4 and 5 compared to, let's say, the second digit?
I would say you got that whole space. So you really got, Will, you got from 2 all the way back to the cuboid. Okay, so kind of look at between 1 and 2 as like a tripwire. And once I get to, another way to look at it is the 4-toe crease. So if you kind of just look at that 4-toe crease, that's your platform where you could still have, providing you have the mobility or the openness at the foot level, you can still let the big toe play its balance role. It can still be, it has to touch the ground for balance, but I can still keep the pressure on 2 all the way around the cuboid. Now, if I'm walking and that wave is kind of turned down a little bit, the light's been dimmed, I'll get a little more cuboid in the ground. As I turn that light brighter and I start to express a more sort of robust wave, a bigger wave, a huge spiral, then I start to get higher and I kind of ride that 2 through 4 or 5 area right there, and I'm more towards the top outside corner. When we train somebody, we'd love to get them to an inside ankle bone high 10 in the training, right? If you were to scale it, because when I go to sprint, when I go to jump, when I go to throw, when I go to swing in a dynamic setting, well, shit, inside ankle bone high 10 needs to be there, right? And if I've got 10, then it can start to ramp down based on the performance or the task that's in front of me. If I'm just walking, I'm maybe at a 2, a 3. I start to jog, I climb it to a 4, a 5. I sprint, turn that thing up to a 10 so that we control the force happening, right? The pressure happening, the momentum building, and kind of sending those force numbers to what, 6, 7 times. So we've got to be able to control it at its maximum so that we don't revert back to a 2 or a 3 when it really should be at a 10.
So when you actually hit the ground, your foot comes back like this, right? Is that pronation to you as long as you keep inside ankle bone high? Like, I know I'm using the word academically, but the foot does swing back freely. Is that correct?
Are you talking about like something where you're like this? This is all inside ankle bone high. So I should be able to land inside ankle bone high, corner inside ankle bone high, release, reset, land inside ankle bone high, corner, reset, land inside ankle bone high, corner, reset. So I should be able to keep that foot in sort of that baby out the womb fetal tuck throughout the whole cycle, provided that I have the space at the ankle gyro. And that is the biggest piece, because if the ankle gyro is stuck at all, you will see a compensatory pattern at the foot. You will see something misshape itself to allow you to move pressure in and out of the system and get you to go forward.
So this might be where you disconnect with the academic community, because they're like, you have to pronate. They mean forefoot pronation. They're with you pretty much on the midfoot pronation, right? Like to not let the inside ankle bone drop, the navicular. But the forefoot, they say, has to come down. It seems to me like you guys pivot and then bring it into pronation, what they would call pronation, after the step, where they do it during the step.
I haven't seen it trained. That's the problem, is that it gets back to where's it at in the training? Like if that's what they agreed with, there'd be inside ankle bone high training everywhere. there'd be people saying the same shit that I just said right now. There'd be people making sure with all their power that every foot was inside ankle bone high. But what they really say is that they're pronating like this. They're turning the shin in. And what it really amounts to, Will, is that if I allow any of it in the training, when you turn up those pressure numbers, it's going to explode. It's going to extrapolate, right? And so the nuance I would say is the cornering action in getting people to understand how a foot could be where it's at and an ankle can turn in and out. And then I get back to pronation's one plane, one range. You know, if for a spiral body, a spiral behavior, the words always will fall short because it will never get to the bottom of it all, which is what is that happening in front of me as the body moves through space, right? What is that I'm looking at? And trying to keep the word pronation alive, trying to keep the word supination alive, it creates confusion, right? You can really see how it makes it tough to understand what's going on, because we'll have people come in and they'll be like, man, I didn't realize where my foot had to be. And I was like, yeah, it's hard to kind of conceptualize it looking through a book or looking at some of the things that we see, because there's not quite a word for it. You know, it's super nuanced. And oftentimes we're down there on the ground and we are just shaping a foot with our hands to where it should be and showing them kinesthetically where they got to get to. And then it's, okay, do you feel that? All right, lock that in. Let's rep that thing out.
And then my other question would be is where does it come from? Where does that concept of the foot landing like that come from? Because all we did, and the more that we studied and we started identifying the pattern is when we seen more inside ankle bone high, there was never an injury. There was always the highest level of efficiency. So when somebody says, well, Usain Bolt did this, well, then Usain Bolt had a little talent left in the tank. He had a little efficiency left in the tank.
And when it collapsed, he tore the hamstring.
When it went too far, he tore his hamstring. So you know it had to have something to do with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with pretty much all you're saying there. There was a video on Instagram you put up the other day of Usain Bolt taking off, and you put inside ankle bone high in the first portion. I actually have it here if you wanna see it. And
throw it up.
Screen by screen. Yeah.
Do you have a screen share option on your?
I do have a screen share option. Yeah, and I'm gonna pull it up. The thing is, I did a slow motion assessment myself. I'm gonna play it. It's only a minute, and I want you to tell me where I went wrong here, or where I misunderstood. Okay, because it might really help bridge the academic community. Let me play that for you here.
It's gonna present low, but it's gonna climb high.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we already know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We've watched a couple.
But show it
No,
to
this is-
everybody.
let me see the assessment here, and I'll.
This
It's a
is
good
the
question.
question.
It's a good question.
I'd rather the question than just say we're wrong.
Okay.
Do you have your screen share or no?
I
There you
do.
go. Oh, here we go. Happy screen sharing. You gotta like that, huh? Oh, you sing.
Come on, load. There it is. Okay, so I'm gonna put the volume up here, and it'll play in a second, hopefully.
Two things I wanted to highlight here. One is the side of his foot that he's taking off of. To me, it clearly looks like he's taking off the weak side of his foot. So you can see, let's watch frame by frame, at the very end, that is to the middle, but it's definitely not the outside edge of his foot, okay? And then his heel turns in before turning out. Okay, so to me, when I look back again, I can see the ankle bone climbing. I like that because that indicates he's really supinating at the time that he's doing it. Okay, so I'm actually looking at the outside ankle bone here because I can't see the inside ankle bone. The outside ankle bone is pushing up. The inside's doing that. To me, the talus is pushing the bone out. Okay, so let's take a look at that. As that's happening, it's climbing, climbing, climbing. There's a point right here where it dips in lower. To me, that's ankle bone going lower, him dumping a little bit of energy, and that associates with rotation, the external rotation of the tibia, and you can see the heel's pointing in with the heel, external with the tibia, until he rotates right back in afterwards. Okay, so ankle bone climbs back in and everything goes internally. But before that, it looked like there was a dump right here, from here to there. Okay, how am I mistaken?
Will, can you see our screen?
Give me 1 second here.
Is it big enough? Is this thing?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so you right here is where this is where we get back to where is the pressure, right? So we got to start with pressure in the system. So at this point, there's no pressure in the system. As we start to go, you watch the kneecap go from pointing straight to pointing out. So that kneecap pointing out right here, that's the shin bone turning. That's the thigh bone turning. You can look up at the hip area near the microphone icon. You see the hip sitting back. So now we are at inside ankle bone high. Now,
Agreed.
the foot isn't the gyro. That's very important. So the foot is the pivot point. So it's anchoring down, and then the shin and the ankle, the ankle and the hip are coming around the corner. So as they finish around the corner, once the foot releases, then the heel, it becomes the trail storm. So the heel away is going to present after the corner and after the release, because it's not the foot that's doing the spinning, it's the shin right here that goes from out to in, and then it releases, and that's why the heel has to follow the trail storm. So if that shin's turning in quick and that thigh's turning in quick around an outside pivot point, the foot holds down. When it leaves the ground, it gets dragged with the shin and the thigh. And that's why you'll see right here, you're saying it's still in because it hasn't fully released from the ground. Once it releases, it's going to follow the trail storm, and then he's already into his reset. So what you have is pack, corner, release, reset. Land, pack, corner, release, reset. And so it's happening, he's in a drive phase, a dig phase, happening really quick. So the cycle is pack, corner, release, reset, because he's got to get it up and down for the next stride. So this is where task and circumstance comes in, right? What is going on in this video? What is he trying to do with the pivot point energy system in this video? He's trying to rev up the engine, so he's burning the cycles real quick. And the common thing we would see is that people mistake the foot as a gyro, and they're trying to spin the foot, whereas that foot really anchors, and it kind of almost like you would drive down a stake to hold down a tent. It sort of tense or anchors down that column, and then the spin or the rotary behavior, the spiral behavior, is really from the shin and the thigh. So when you see this explosive move here from the pack into the corner, kneecap out, kneecap in, kneecap out, kneecap in. This isn't even where I would even look for a heel release. Kneecap out, kneecap in, and then it releases, and that's why you see the heel away there. And then he goes ahead and he resets, and then you see the bow start to show itself. Now, the left foot on Bolt, that was a little sketchier. So yes, there is a little more inside ankle bone low on this landing. You can see where he still has the bow and he still has the corner, but this would be a situation where I'd look at this guy, whoever it was, and I'd say, we got to get that foot straighter. We got to get that inside ankle bone higher. We got to clean out the junk, the crazy glue in that ankle right there, because this is going to start to bleed into more inside ankle bone low. But even here, you can still see the pattern. Pack, kneecap out, kneecap in, kneecap out, kneecap in, release, heel away, reset. Go back again. Pack, kneecap out, still packing, bicep pointing out, kneecap pointing out. Now the elbow goes away at the same time as the heel. So look up at his elbow. That bicep, that forearm, they're on the same timing as the thigh and the shin. They're on the same exact timing. So when that bicep closes, when the elbow's away, that's when we decide that the heel goes away. Bam, right there. And then boom, go ahead and reset. So as he starts to reset the leg, look what he does with the arm. He resets the arm. The right side's already getting back into its other bow. Pack, 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 pack. Corner it, and then it'd be a release and reset over the top. So it's more so based off of circumstance, how quick are the cycles, and then the bigger picture would be the foot isn't the rotary behavior. That just has to anchor down. The more crooked toe you get, the sketchier it starts to be. If you take it simple like this, Will. If my feet are really crooked and I go to corner, I block myself. So you'll see a crooked foot person they got no corner. So they just walk around like they're riding around on a horse. Now the straighter the foot, then I can really get that corner in there. I can really pack that bow. So it's just a matter of where's the foot touching down. That is playing inside ankle bone high. If that person comes in here, though, with those feet, I'm still going to address them to try to get them back to a Goata 10, right? But really the post was to kind of get people to see that inside ankle bone high is really a spectrum, right? Trying to get you to 10. And then when you look at the second slide, which is the crash, the explosion, the injury, you see when it goes inside ankle bone low to a 10, which is the injury. That's where now there's this harmony between the foot piece, the shin piece, and the thigh piece, and then something has to give.
So at what point would you have him on the edge of his foot? Because everything you've told me so far has been outside edge to pivot to the inside. At what point does that become important?
You're talking about the inside of your foot?
Yeah, because he's clearly taking off more of the inside, and you're saying it's the pivot point, right? But it is important to be on the outside.
He's not packing any pressure into the inside of the foot.
Yeah, so when it's once again, where's the pressure? And then the heel is going to follow the pivot point. So when a reverse mover is working through space, they're on the inside corner of the foot. So they're going to go ahead and spin the shin out. When that foot releases, the heel will trail wherever the pivot point was. So now it starts to trail in. That's why if you were truly on the inside corner of your foot using that as the pivot point, the heel would have been here as he released. But because he's on the outside corner of the foot, when I move around, the heel is going to release, and it's going to be that trail storm around the outside corner. The straighter the foot, the more violent we can corner, and the more violent the heel release looks. And it depends on how quick I want to cycle through it, depending on my task. How much do I need? What am I trying to get done?
And listen, your question's perfect because it's a common misconception. Like people don't that's the whole thing of loading energy,
absorbing pressure.
Yeah, transfer. That's why we don't say they drive force into the ground, they absorb force into a bow. If you're absorbing force into the bow, then the ankle behavior is always going to be high.
The other piece of it is, Will, I mean, look at track spikes. Like you take a damn foot that's supposed to be open and you slam it into this gut environment right here. It's difficult to allow your foot to play like it should. It's almost like a really tight sandal. You start to see the foot start to get cramped, and crooked foot is like everywhere in track, right? It's because everything's so crammed up that the feet are trying to compensate. It gets back to the shoe dilemma, right? Just opening a toe box can do a lot for a foot because of what it allows it, how it allows everything to play out.
Hey, great, guys. Thanks very much. That was super awesome, and good luck to you. Your stuff is great.
Thank you, Will.
Like clear up? Did that like create a pretty good technical understanding of what you were seeing and why it's still congruent?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, man, come get certified.
I will do.
Come get certified.
Will do. All right, have a good one, guys.
All right, man.
Have a good night, Will.
All right. So what's this is like one of my favorite features about No Filter is, Will had that analysis obviously already made on his computer. He saw your Instagram post a little while ago, and then he got a chance to like come on screen and actually just pull that up with the screen share and show you guys and ask the question. And I know that's probably been like he put a lot of thought into that. He had this whole analysis, like he did his own slow motion analysis. Obviously,
it's the beautiful
that would have been
it's video. Yeah. It's video. It's what we live by.
Well, this is the kind of the drawback of Instagram. In the past, that would have been a 3-day battle on that comment section. Just me and Will battling, talking about things that really are. It's just so hard to, right there. Like the only way to clarify that is face to face with the video, explain it, and be able to deep dive it. And sometimes these really deep kind of, questions that need some sort of explaining. They need some fleshing out. It's just impossible to pull off on an Instagram. But now with this type of platform, we can. I mean, that's amazing that we can do that. and have that back and forth. That's money. Love that.
And so you guys are going to be offering a lot more information on No Filter. Do you want to share with the audience what your kind of plans with the platform are? What kind of content you guys are going to be putting out in the future?
Yeah, so we're going to do everything from a newsletter, something that, you know, kind of reporting on what we got going on. We're going to introduce any kind of new exercises and things like that that we come up with. Exercises.
There you go. Put the money in the jar.
Every time this guy says
internal rotation, I make him put some money in the jar.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy because you want to try to explain things to where everybody can understand it, but it don't make no sense when we sit back and talk about it or whatever.
Going.
Yeah, so we want to put out, you know, a weekly workout. We're going to put some video content up with a weekly workout. We're going to do some stuff where we explaining and educating based off of, you know, we're not going to show the recode process and how it happens and assessment process and all. That's all stuff for the cert. But we're going to put some stuff up there, you know, for people to grab their attention, for them to see and give them an exercise or two to feel something. And then that way, you know, they'll dive in head first. We'll have monthly subscriptions and things like that. We'll probably build it into tiers, like, you know, how much information you want or how much exercise you want. You may have some people that just want a daily regimen so that their back don't hurt. And you might want some, you know, you might have an athlete jump on there that's going to want a performance workout once a week. That's going to keep him inside of the math and do the a lot of seminar type stuff where we sit down and we invite people in and we have these conversations and we let them pull their videos up and throw them up on the screen and do what we just did, man. I think it's great.
And that's, you know, one of the things I loved about doing it this style too was when you were explaining all of the movement patterns and the behaviors, Rick, you standing there and actually showing the inside ankles lifting and it's
bring my gyro with me.
Yeah. It makes a world of difference.
I mean, this is at the lab weekend. Like, this just helps simplify things for people. Right now, they can see it. Right, we're all built to just first see something. Right, see that behavior and kind of take in that information. So it's huge, and we try to use as much as we can. And oftentimes, I just stand up and just explain it and just use my own foot.
That's why it's better than Instagram.
Yeah, to kind of help.
It's no interaction on Instagram. They get to see it one time.
Other than comments, people arguing with you in the comments. That's the engagement you get on Instagram.
Now we'll argue with y'all here.
Yeah. That's it. People gonna argue with us regardless wherever we are.
And you know, like, that's the cool thing too, guys. If you wanted to interact with Gary and Ricky and actually share your video, you know, that knock button is there. You can hit the knock button at any time. The host of the stream will be able to see who's knocking, who wants to enter the stream, and you can actually show your movement and be like, hey, am I doing this right? And they can coach you in real time. It's really, really cool. So if you guys want to follow Ricky and Gary, they have a hosting account on nofilter.net. If you go to the host page, you click the host and you search GLS Performance, their profile will show up. They're going to start scheduling content. Any content that's scheduled on nofilter.net is also featured on the homepage in the upcoming streams tab. It's shown in chronological order of when it's scheduled for. So, you know, you can see upcoming streams in the next couple of days, or you can scroll weeks in advance. But either way, if you go to the host page, search up GLS Performance, you'll be able to find their page. You can follow them and get notifications on your profile when they do bring out new content. It'll show up in your My Stuff section of your profile. And then just keep an eye out for all their content that they're making, because obviously they're like, I'm so excited to have you guys on here. I think the map that you're building, the language that you're developing for this concept of movement that basically, you know, it debunks a lot of old ideas, right? So Garrett just asked also, will the video be posted to share after the live is finished? Yes, I did choose to save this video afterwards so that you can still watch the replay. I'm going to save it myself and send it to Gary and Ricky. They can chop it up and use it for whatever social media they want. So you can watch the replay. Cool thing about No Filter is you can also vault your content. So if you wanted to be a host on No Filter and you wanted to have live streams like this, this whole stream has been recording. And then if you go to my profile under Anthony Manuel, you can actually watch the full video replay which is super useful if you wanted to go back and you wanted to look at some of the demonstrations of the behavior patterns again. You want to rewind it. We're going to launch our mobile app soon too, so that you can get the videos on your mobile phone in super high def without having to go on a Safari browser or a Chrome browser. But No Filter is a really fun platform for this reason. I think Gary and Ricky are the perfect use case for what we're trying to kind of accomplish with this technology, and we're stoked to have you on here, guys.
Yeah, we're excited about it, man.
This is fun. This is really cool. I like
yeah.
this interaction.
The whole setup, it's going to be great.
All right. So if people want to find you in the meantime, other than on No Filter, what's the best place for them to get a hold of you?
So we have the at GLS Performance Team, and on Instagram, and then it's at GLS_training on Instagram, and then he's at Red Pill Rick on Instagram, and then you could track us down through Twitter the same.
Twitter too, yeah.
And then Facebook's just my name.
I'm not on Facebook. Kicked me out.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not. I think there's a page.
We found out who you.
If y'all, yeah. If y'all say, let me know how it's going over there, because I haven't been able to get in. So if you want to find me, Instagram and Twitter where it's at.
Yeah. And we're
Awesome,
going to put
guys.
our podcast up on there too.
Yeah, and again, like what's cool about No Filter, again, you can record this. I record 2 podcasts on here. I know Will records the Art of Move podcast on No Filter. He's actually one of the No Filter hosts on here.
Okay.
So if you wanted to record a podcast, it's very easy. All you have to do is save the recorded video, upload it to a platform like Anchor, which extracts the audio for you automatically, and then it uploads it right to Spotify. You can copy your RSS feed and upload it to iTunes. It's very easy to basically take all the content that you make on No Filter and put it on every other platform. Like I'm going to put some of this on Instagram. We're going to put this up probably in the Best of Sports No Filter podcast channel. There's going to be all kinds of different platforms that you can utilize this content for. So keep an eye out on nofilter.net for these guys' upcoming streams and all the content that they're going to be offering. They're going to have some subscriptions. They're going to have weekly workouts. They're going to give you more in-depth information and more in-depth education about this new map that's being created for how the human body was meant to move. I know it's personally changed my life indescribably, which is why I invited these guys on to No Filter in the first place. It's why I've been obsessed with what they're doing. And they're definitely people to kind of keep an eye out for. So GLS_performance_team for Instagram, GLS_training, and red_pill.rick. Those are the accounts to follow on Instagram. Gary and Ricky, thank you so much for doing this with me. This was an absolute blast. And I'm just so stoked to see what you guys come up with.
All right, man. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Anthony.